Ah, come in. You catch me in the moment. Just before, I'm just about to pour myself a little tipple. This is the very last, or not quite the last, there's a bit more. This Ancient Mariner single malt Scotch whisky. It was actually given to me by my publisher when I published this book, Mariner. But I'm having a little tot of it, actually in an old naval rum tot, and I'm having a little tot of it, partly because I'm about to go on holiday, which means it's good that you dropped round this evening because I won't be around for another couple of weeks, so we might as well make the most of your calling round now. This is just a sort of pre-holiday tot to get myself in a generally nautical and boat-worthy or seaworthy frame of mind. Come and have a seat. So I'm actually off to the Norfolk Broads with my family, and it's great. You may remember when I read to you from The Wind in the Willows and I longed to get my boat in the water. I got my little sailing canoe in the water, but now I have got the Ranworth Rose, my little gaff cutter, little 20-foot sort of weekender sailing boat in the water too, and we're going to stay on a houseboat in the Broads, and then we're going to sort of be able to sail each day, which will be just lovely. So here's the prospect. I've been working very hard to get to this point. Anyway, of course, like so many people, my pleasure in the Broads began as a literary pleasure, thanks to Arthur Ransome. I mean, my whole sailing life is sort of interplayed with Arthur Ransome, as you know, the great writer of sailing books for children. It started with Swallows and Amazons, which were up in the Lake District. But there's a series of Broads ones, of which the most famous and probably the best is this one, Coot Club. And it's full of the most beautiful descriptions. There's a map of the Broads, and so whenever I'm sailing and sailing on the Broads, you know, I just feel myself to be part of the story that's in this book. And tomorrow my daughter and I are going to take our boat all the way down through Barton Broad and along here and then back up to Hickling Broad where the houseboat is. Anyway, it just gives you it's beautifully written, and they take great pleasure in all the minutiae of the boats, but the children also have adventures and set things to rights. And Coot Club is really an outlier or outrunner of the whole eco-literature. You know, it's all about conservation. It's all about the children wanting to look after the little coots and other birds on the Broads, and it's all about their adventures against the horrible hullabaloos, as they call them, the sort of tourists in big motorboats creating a wash, disturbing the nests of the young birds. But let me just give you, here's the second chapter, and it's a description of the two of the children who've not been to the Broads before arriving and getting the sheer sense of the boatiness of the place. Dick and Dorothea. Dick's the sort of scientific type, and Dorothea is sort of like a romantic novelist in the making. Never in all their lives had Dick and Dorothea seen so many boats. Mrs. Barrable had taken them shopping and had been in a store that seemed to sell every possible thing for the insides and outsides of sailors. This is a description of Horning, and Wroxham is the same as well. She had taken them to lunch at an inn where everybody was talking about boats at the top of his voice, and now they had gone down to the river to look for the Horning boatman with his motor launch. The huge flags of the boat letters were flying from their tall flagstaffs. Little flags, copies of the big ones, were fluttering at the mastheads of the hired yachts. There were boats everywhere, and boats of all kinds, from the big black wherry with her gaily painted mast loading at the old granary by Wroxham Bridge and meant for nothing but hard work, to the punts of the boatmen going to and fro, and the motor cruisers filling up with petrol, and hundreds of big and little sailing yachts tied to the quays or moored in rows, 2 or 3 deep in the dykes and artificial harbours beside the main river. "Why are such a lot of the boats wearing dust covers?" asked Dorothea. "Raincoats, really," said Mrs. Barrable. "Those are awnings. Everybody rigs them at night to make an extra room by giving a roof to the steering wheel. And of course, when the boats are not in use, the awnings keep them dry." And so we're introduced to the kind of glories of the boating life. So there's that's Wroxham in its busyness, which we'll be driving through tomorrow. But there are also these moments of peace and these beautiful illustrations. Look at the illustration here. That's Teasel, the main boat that the children are on, and Titmus, which the other hero, Tom Dudgeon, has, and he's very proud to have rigged up a little awning and be able to cook underneath it. Just a beautiful image of stillness. Let's just read the description of a sunset and of coming to the end of a day's sailing, which I hope to be doing by this time tomorrow. The sun had set, the wind was dropping, but the Teasel was still gliding on, so smoothly, so easily, that it seemed impossible to stop. On and on they sailed. A sunset glow spread over the sky, and the reeds stood out black against it. On and on. They could hardly see where the reflections ended and the banks began. Nothing else was moving. Windmills, dark against the darkening sky, seemed twice their proper size. At last, peering forward, they could see that the river was dividing in two. Alton Dyke, said Tom, hardly above a whisper. For some time now he had been at the tiller. There was hardly enough wind to give the Teasel steerage way as she bore round up the Waveney River. It died altogether. The boom swung in. The main sheet dipped in the water. Have you got a torch? Said Tom. Mine's in the Titmus. Dick was into the cabin and out again with his torch. Will you take her, Admiral? Tom hurried forward and stood waiting with the rond anchor in his hand, flashing the light of the torch on the bank. We'll try here, he said. Bring her in. She's hardly moving. Will she steer? Gently the Teasel pushed her nose towards the bank. There was a thud and a squelch as Tom jumped ashore. He had the anchor fixed in a moment and was back aboard again as the dying tide swung the Teasel round. Aft in the well, they heard the faint rattle of the block as the jib came down. The peak of the mainsail came slowly and with difficulty, for the halyard had swollen with the evening dew. By the light of their torches they stowed the sails. By the light of their torches they rigged the awnings, first over the Teasel and then over the Titmus. Well, it isn't the furthest anybody's ever done in a day, said Tom, but she really has come a jolly long way. It seems a pity, said the Admiral, but I suppose we must try to keep awake, just until we've had our supper. And there she is. It's just beautiful image then. All this sort of lovely images about this thud and squelch as Tom jumped ashore, and yet the image of the reeds black against the setting sun. It's just such atmospheric writing. And of course, having read about Broads like that as a child, there's a kind of magical aura over them anywhere, and all the places we will sail by in the next week are places that I first learned the names of as a little boy in Africa, reading stories about sailing in Norfolk and not knowing where Norfolk was or anything about it, and then realising it really was a place and you really could go there and you could really sail. So, gosh, where did I put my drink? Astonishing how one loses. Oh, there it is. So I'm going to sort of drink a tot, as the sailors called their ration, to the upcoming adventures. And as I say, sadly I won't be here if you try and drop in the next couple of weeks, but I'll let you know when I'm back and you can drop round again and I'll tell you a little bit more about my adventures. Maybe we'll read something else nautical, but thanks for dropping round tonight.